Welcome to the second episode of Lifting the Veil. This time we're going to talk about the journey that took us to Lords of the Fallen v2.0, the reception to 2.0, and what the future looks like for Lords of the Fallen.
Following the launch of version 2.0, we sold 200,000 units in 10 days. To put that in perspective, since November 2023, up until version 2.0, we sold 650,000 units. We've been absolutely overwhelmed by the positive reaction to version 2.0 and really humbled by the fact the gaming community has given the game a second chance. It's an amazing achievement by the team and testament to all their hard work, considering the next major game in the franchise is also in full production.
This is the redemption story. Lords of the Fallen had a huge marketing push. The campaign was firing on all cylinders. There were billboards in Times Square, the London Underground. The trailers were everywhere. It was playing in front of movies, in cinemas. It was really a powerful, impactful campaign, which I witnessed as a spectator as well at the time. The hype was real. The streaming embargo lifted the day before launch. We had some of the biggest content creators in the Souls-like space covering the game. We had Fextra Life, Fighting Cowboy, Co-Carnage.
Love him or hate him, Asmongold is one of the biggest content creators within the action RPG space. He showed amazing support for Lords of the Fallen throughout the marketing campaign. He was truly invested in the title and basically said, this was the perfect game for him. Skip forward to 12th of October, influencer embargo lifts, Asmongold boots up the game. This is the game that he's been absolutely hyped for. He literally says, if this game sucks, I'm gonna lose my goddamn mind. We're all watching and it crashes on startup. Absolutely gutting. He ended up streaming the game for several hours and actually created a list in notepad, live on stream, of all the things he didn't like about the game. Too many mobs, no jump button, too much forward momentum when moving, character slides all over the place. And it was just heartbreaking to read, considering all the support he'd shown up to release. But likewise, it was amazing to have this very actionable list of things we could do to the game, which very much echoed a lot of the community feedback as well, and ended up contributing to version 2.0.
So one thing that's easy to take for granted now is how important and intrinsic streamers are to the review process and the reception process for a game. So, I can only imagine what it was like for the team. It gets to launch day and you've got some of the biggest streamers in the world sat there playing your game live in front of millions of people. And not only are they playing it live in front of millions of people, they're giving their verdict in real time, their gut reaction and response to the game. I can't really think of another medium where that happens, where what you put out into the world on release day is streamed, viewed and critiqued in real time in front of your very eyes. So I can only imagine what it was like for the team when they saw certain streamers playing the game. So it was launch day and the community reception was understandably mixed. There were a lot of people singing the praises of the game, some people less so, but I know for a fact that the team took all of the feedback really seriously, especially the mixed response, and really immediately started to think about how they could address that.
I often describe the launch version of Lords of the Fallen as death by 1,000 cuts. Arguably, there's not one particular major element that doesn't work. It's a lot of smaller, minor issues that when combined end up resulting in a frustrating experience. Souls-likes aren't meant to be difficult. They're difficult by nature. People enjoy that difficulty. But when that difficulty just almost becomes artificial difficulty, too many mobs, too many hidden enemies, archers with, too high an accuracy and too long a range, taken in isolation, these elements are what makes a Souls-like, but combine it all together and suddenly the game went from challenging to frustrating. The good news was we knew exactly what we needed to fix, and we set about doing that.
So for the first couple of weeks post-launch, the team were working really hard on daily fixes and updates. Not just bug fixes, but really trying to get into the weeds of the game and address things like difficulty balancing. So what's really interesting with a genre like the Souls-like is intrinsic to its design and its brand is that it's very difficult, right? These games are almost obnoxiously difficult. And that's a badge of honor for certain members of the community, and we get that. But then how do you balance an experience like that when you've got lots of feedback from different people, some of whom are struggling to get into the game? It becomes an accessibility concern. But then other players don't want it to be too easy because they actually thrive on the punishment. So really trying to figure out where the balance sits and fits with a Souls-like is one of those things that even way back then we were thinking about seriously, and it's really helping inform us now as we try and figure out what we do with Lords now, but also what we do with the next game as well. Slowly but surely, the user reviews started to creep up on PC and console. That was a huge relief, but there was still a lot of work that needed to be done. So after about 30 updates, we got to the 1.5 big milestone. That introduced performance improvements, we had the advanced modifier system, but we knew there was still a lot of work to be done.
The Steam score stabilized around 61-62%, which was great considering where we'd come from, but we absolutely didn't set out to create a 60% scoring game. Last summer, many of us played both Shadow of the Erdtree and Wukong, both amazing Souls-like experiences. Shadow of the Erdtree redefined what an expansion could be. It was basically a fully fledged game in its own right. I absolutely loved it. And Wukong presented some of the best, most responsive combat I've experienced in any game to date. The main character moved like a hot knife through butter. It was silky smooth and super satisfying. These two games releasing back to back, it felt like the next era of the Souls-like. We felt inspired and started replaying Lords of the Fallen with fresh eyes alongside new rounds of user testing with the very agency that did it for Elden Ring.
The user reviews were ticking up, there was a positive buzz in the studio, but what we decided to do, and the team really wanted to do, was sit down and play their own game. And this is one of them things that I think we take for granted in games and development is playing our own work. So the team took a step back post-launch as a team, revisited what they'd done in totality to try and understand it, what was working, what wasn't working, where was the balancing off. Some of it's subjective, but again, listening to the community feedback, looking at reviews, trying to identify those sticking points. That was really important to the team. And in game development and production, it's a difficult thing to do. It's why consultants are brought in. It's why you kind of have mock reviewers as a cottage industry. Because when you're working that hard on a game full time, it's really difficult to find the time to then just step back with fresh eyes, come in, say, this is what we have right now, and this is how we can improve it.
Taking my CI Games hat off, as a long-term Souls-like player, I legitimately loved Lords of the Fallen at launch. It scratched that Souls-like itch, but felt different to anything I'd played before. It forced you to play more aggressively, faster. There was all these mobs. I could really lay into them and release some steam by doing so. But replaying it directly after Shadow of the Erdtree and Wukong, and something suddenly felt a little off. We needed to catch up. The dodge cancellation window felt too small. Your character rolled too far when evading, so you lost a bit of precision in combat. You had that forward momentum when attacking. Again, it was not any one thing, it was a number of smaller things that just needed finessing and refining to get the combat feeling as tight as it needed to, following these great new Souls-like experiences.
I recently read a user comment which likened our style of video game development to a Souls-like itself, which we think is a really appropriate metaphor. The idea of trying again until you get it right, taking on different runs, trying to overcome the challenge. That really kind of fits with what we went through with Lords and where we are right now. So in November last year, we released version 1.6. The feedback was really positive to that update, and that really spurred us on for the next 6 months to work towards v2.0. If the launch version of Lords of the Fallen was death by 1,000 cuts, then v2.0 was success by 1,000 fixes. It was the culmination of over 50 updates, bringing the game closer than it's ever been to our original vision for Lords of the Fallen. But was it enough to turn the tide?
With the launch of version 2.0, we felt it was finally time to get it back in the hands of Asmongold. We could have done this at any point during any of the 50 previous updates, but something felt different this time. We felt confident in Lords of the Fallen that this was the definitive edition and that we would finally change his verdict. He ended up streaming it for almost 9 hours and then actually finished the game off screen in his own time. We'd fixed everything on his list and it didn't go unnoticed. He literally called this out on stream, and the third video he uploaded on YouTube is titled When Game Devs Actually Listen. We had changed his goddamn mind.
The Friendship Pass in v2.0 was a gamble, but it paid off. We didn't know how it was going to be received. It was a big investment from the team. We made a big push to make it work. Obviously, there's still a few little technical issues and kinks in there, but it really seems to have been received positively by the community. We'd like to think it's maybe setting a new precedent for this type of game as well. And I think personally that idea of owning a game that you then want to share with a friend and being able to do that for free and not having to have them pay for the privilege is a really generous and important thing for us to do as an industry. As we know all too well, you only really know what the problems are going to be at launch. So as with the launch of the game originally, with v2.0, when it went into the wild, when it got in your hands, that's when we started to see, okay, there's a few little issues here, a few little bugs, technical problems to be ironed out. We're working really hard to address those. There have already been a few updates since launch a few weeks ago, and we'll keep iterating on that and working to improve the game.
So the game launched with what we called seamless co-op. This wasn't shared progression, but you could journey with each other for as long as you wanted. And as a result, we didn't want the guest player to be able to disrupt the user journey of the host player. For example, the guest player couldn't start boss fights, as that could potentially disrupt some of the side missions of the host player. A few of these elements then made it into our new shared progression mode, and we heard you guys loud and clear. We're working hard now to unify the co-op gameplay experience for both the guest player and the host player, so it feels even more equal going forward. Already, with the improvements we've released since v2.0, the guest player can now climb ladders, unlock shortcuts, open chests, and further improvements are on the way. We're constantly saying we're players first, and we honestly mean it. You'd probably be surprised at how many of your comments we actually read. I reckon I personally read almost every comment said about Lords of the Fallen, wherever it is. Whether that's comments on YouTube videos, on our YouTube videos, yes, we do read all of those as well. And we are honestly interested in hearing your views, so keep those comments coming. We'll continue reading them, and we will continue shaping the Lords of the Fallen experience in line with your thoughts.
We're really wanting to take it a step further with you, the community. With initiatives like the Crusaders of the Fallen program, that's really like our motorcycle club. We've picked about 12 key thought leaders from the community. We're working closely with them to try and understand what's working in the game, what isn't working so well in the game, and how we can improve it. We also understand that in the modern landscape, the community is quite fractured and spread out. You've got content creators who have their own communities and tribes. You've got people who just want to comment on YouTube or Reddit or X, and we really just need to try and do the work and figure out where our people are, how do we appeal to them, and how do we engage in dialogue with them. What's been really interesting to discover from the community and the feedback so far on 2.0 is now we've improved the moment-to-moment game feel, movement and responsiveness. Pairing that with co-op and an emphasis on co-op with the Friends Pass, so more of you are playing together than ever before, it's starting to create a little bit of a sense that maybe the bosses are, if not easy, at least easier to defeat when there's two of you who are highly skilled and working together. What that kind of brings to the forefront for us is with a soulslike, how do you balance it? It comes back to that thing of, in a game where you've got so many options and choices to make before you reach that progress blocking boss, how do we as designers and developers curate that experience, or make sure we're aware of all the different ways that you can curate your own experience? So with so many items, gear, stats to invest into your character and characters as a pair, how are we able to stay mindful of the difficulty that you're creating for yourself and how that ties into the boss battles? That's something that we're really thinking keenly about right now and trying to solve as a team and with you as a community.
So thanks for tuning in to the second episode of Lifting the Veil. More juice coming with the next episode, and I know I said it last time, but I actually mean it this time. We are looking to reveal a few sneak peeks of the next game in the Lords of the Fallen franchise. I would say keep your questions coming in the meantime, but I scoured the comments and couldn't actually see any questions on the last video despite hundreds of comments, most of which were simply calling us out as either looking like we're part of a rock band or that I resemble someone called Jack Sparrow? No idea who he is.
So the build that I use in Lords of the Fallen is an Orion Preacher build. I've got an emphasis on Radiance and Strength. And in terms of the spells that I use, IRL, I've got an Aura of Tenacity, so I don't need to use that. But I do use Aureus' Judgment and a bit of Piercing Light. And yeah, I'll just rain hell down on all comers. I think what's interesting as well is that I know Ryan's the same, we like to dual wield. So I'll use the flail and a mace, and I'll just kind of whirlwind my way through mobs. And I think Lords of the Fallen is really well suited to dual wielding, which is unusual for a Souls-like. It's a really aggressive playstyle, but I think it pays off.
So when I wrote this question, I thought David and I would have two very different builds and that it would be interesting to listen to us both, but having already heard David's answer, my answer's pretty much exactly the same, and maybe that says something about Lords of the Fallen, but I too use a high strength, high radiant character. I wield two weapons, again just like David. I actually wield Pieter's sword and I can't remember what it's called, but some radiant hammer. So yeah, I think it supports what I said in the last video about the fact that dual wielding is a very effective weapon combination in Lords of the Fallen, much more so than probably any other Souls-like I've played. It encourages that aggressive style of play, and two weapons are always going to be better than one.